In this episode, we are going to focus on the idea of a security baseline at the account level because growth in the cloud is rarely slow and orderly. New teams launch projects, new services appear, and new accounts are created to support expansion, experimentation, or acquisition. If each new account begins as a blank slate, security becomes inconsistent almost immediately. A baseline is the set of foundational controls, configurations, and expectations that every account must have from the moment it exists. When that baseline is strong and automatically applied, growth does not erode security posture. When it is weak or optional, growth becomes a multiplier for risk rather than for innovation. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyber.author.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. An account-level security baseline should be thought of as the minimum viable security state that no account is allowed to fall below. This includes identity protections, logging requirements, encryption settings, network restrictions, and policy guardrails that reflect organizational standards. The baseline is not about building a fully hardened environment for every possible workload. It is about ensuring that the essential controls are present everywhere. Beginners sometimes confuse baseline with maximum security, but a baseline is more like a floor than a ceiling. It ensures that every account starts from a position of defensible safety. Without a baseline, each team must reinvent core controls independently, and that leads to inconsistency and drift. One of the first elements in a durable baseline is identity configuration, because identity governs nearly all actions within a cloud account. Strong authentication requirements, limited assignment of high-privilege roles, and centralized identity integration should be built into the baseline rather than added later. If accounts are created without enforced authentication standards, correcting that weakness later can disrupt active users and workflows. Embedding identity standards at creation time reduces friction and prevents privilege sprawl from the beginning. Beginners sometimes treat identity hardening as an advanced topic, but it belongs at the baseline level. Identity stability underpins every other security control. Logging and monitoring configuration form another critical part of an account-level baseline. Every account should automatically send audit logs, administrative activity records, and relevant service telemetry to a centralized, protected location. This ensures that new accounts are not blind spots and that investigative capability is consistent. If logging is optional, some accounts will inevitably lack sufficient visibility, especially under rapid expansion. A baseline that enforces logging by default protects both detection and evidence preservation. Without it, security teams cannot reliably reconstruct events across the environment. Encryption standards also belong in the baseline because data protection should not depend on individual project decisions. Requiring encryption at rest for storage services and enforcing secure communication channels for data in transit ensures that sensitive information is not left exposed by oversight. When encryption requirements are embedded into account creation templates or enforced through policy systems, teams do not have to remember to enable them manually. This reduces accidental noncompliance and improves consistency. Beginners often think encryption decisions happen at the application layer only, but cloud platforms provide infrastructure-level encryption controls that are ideal for baselines. Embedding these controls early simplifies governance later. Network configuration expectations should also be defined at the baseline level to prevent unnecessary exposure. Default network rules can restrict management access, require use of approved segments, and limit open ports that are commonly abused. When accounts inherit safe network defaults, teams are less likely to create insecure patterns unintentionally. Baseline network design does not eliminate flexibility, but it provides a secure starting point that can be expanded deliberately. Without such defaults, each team may interpret network requirements differently, increasing risk variability. Predictable network baselines support predictable defense. Another foundational baseline element is restriction of overly broad permissions, especially those that allow policy modification or privilege escalation. If every new account allows unrestricted creation of administrative roles, the environment becomes vulnerable to internal mistakes and external compromise. A baseline should limit who can assign high-privilege roles and enforce approval workflows for sensitive changes. Embedding these controls early prevents escalation pathways from being baked into new accounts. Beginners sometimes underestimate how quickly privilege creep develops in fast-moving teams. A strong baseline slows that creep before it becomes systemic. Baseline configuration should also include protective guardrails that prevent high-risk service configurations, such as unrestricted public exposure or disabled monitoring. These preventive controls ensure that accounts cannot drift into obviously unsafe states, even under pressure. By combining guardrails with logging and identity controls, the baseline creates layered protection. Each layer reinforces the others and reduces reliance on manual review. When guardrails are applied consistently at account creation, new environments inherit security maturity automatically. This consistency becomes invaluable as the number of accounts grows. Automation is essential to making baselines durable because manual configuration does not scale in dynamic cloud environments. Infrastructure as code templates and account provisioning workflows can embed baseline settings so that every new account begins with required controls already enabled. Automation reduces the risk of human error and ensures repeatability across deployments. Beginners sometimes rely on checklists or documentation alone, but documentation does not enforce configuration. Automated baseline application transforms policy intent into enforceable reality. This shift from advisory to automated control is what allows security to survive rapid growth. Regular validation of baseline compliance is equally important because environments evolve and drift can occur despite automation. Continuous assessment tools can compare account configurations against defined baseline standards and alert when deviations appear. This ensures that changes made over time do not erode foundational protections. Validation also supports auditing and governance reporting by providing measurable evidence of compliance. Beginners sometimes assume that once a baseline is applied, it remains intact indefinitely. In practice, monitoring and periodic review are necessary to maintain integrity. A resilient baseline also anticipates change rather than resisting it. Cloud services evolve, new features are introduced, and organizational needs shift. A baseline that is too rigid can hinder innovation and drive teams to bypass controls. Instead, the baseline should define core security principles while allowing controlled flexibility. Change management processes can incorporate baseline updates as part of service evolution. This approach ensures that growth enhances security maturity rather than undermining it. Flexibility within structure supports long-term sustainability. Communication and training support the effectiveness of a baseline because teams must understand why certain controls exist. When baseline requirements are explained clearly, they are seen as protective measures rather than arbitrary obstacles. Security culture strengthens when developers and operators view baseline controls as shared safety nets. Education also helps teams design systems that align naturally with baseline expectations. A well-understood baseline fosters collaboration between security and operations rather than tension. Ultimately, establishing account-level security baselines that survive rapid growth and change is about embedding protection into the lifecycle of every account. Identity safeguards, logging enforcement, encryption requirements, network defaults, privilege controls, and guardrails form the foundation that every new environment inherits. Automation ensures repeatability, and validation ensures durability. On the exam, you may be asked to choose approaches that maintain security consistency across expanding cloud footprints, and baseline automation is often the most scalable answer. In real cloud environments, a strong baseline transforms rapid growth from a liability into a manageable, secure expansion. When every account begins secure by default, the organization can innovate confidently without sacrificing foundational safety.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit BareMetalCyber.com.